chosen a selection of mostly poetry, but we're going to start with a couple of monologues. And these were monologues that were written, we were asked to write imagining people watching the crucifixion of Jesus. This was something for our local church. And so we imagined some of the women at the cross. We have images of women on the cross there. So two of these monologues. The first one, I've imagined a character called Hannah, who was the wife of one of the Jerusalem temple traders. Yes, I admit it. I was there to watch him die. I knew he was trouble from the moment he rode on into Jerusalem on that donkey, with his motley crowd of followers throwing down their scruffy cloaks and cheering as if he were some kind of king. But even I wasn't prepared for what happened next, when he came into the temple courtyard and threw us all out, turning over the tables and yelling something about a den of thieves and God's house. What did he think he was playing at? We've worked really hard at building up that business, offering a service to the Jewish pilgrims, whilst trying to keep on the right side of the Romans. He could have caused a riot that would have got the whole place shut down. And we lost nearly a whole day's takings, and that's no small matter with this cost of living crisis, I can tell you. So when I heard he'd been arrested, I was relieved. That's the end of that, I thought. I was there in the streets when Pilate offered to release him. I didn't actually join in the shouts of "crucify him." Well, only a little. It's hard not to go along with the crowd. Not that I think Barabbas is much better. He's another terrorist that calls himself a freedom fighter. So I went along to the execution with a bit of a sense of satisfaction. Served him right for stirring things up. Just another troublemaker who'd got what he deserved. But somehow it wasn't quite what I'd expected, although I'm not sure why. After all, I've watched crucifixions before. They're a bit of a public spectacle around here. But this felt different. To begin with, I was very conscious of the other women standing there and that uncomfortable reminder that he was someone's son, someone's friend, someone's lover. But it wasn't just that. There was something about the way he spoke to the other criminals. Something about his words of forgiveness when he was torn with pain, rather than the hate and anger we usually hear. And most of all, something about the desperate way he cried out to God that got to me. Maybe he wasn't just a troublemaker after all. And I have a feeling that we haven't heard the last of him.
Hello, from the other half of Jalna. This piece, which is similar to Jan's story, really, it's entitled Last Best Hope. And it was written in response to a request from a group of women friends who'd wanted to write or reimagine familiar biblical stories. And we produced a booklet called Telling Tales. And I think we're quite surprised ourselves just how diverse it was and how these reimagined stories were, and written by women and from a woman's perspective. Last Best Hope. It wasn't as though I hadn't warned her, hadn't explained all the comings and goings, all the court intrigues, the growing anger. She'd chosen to ignore it. Mary, this sister of mine, turning her face against the obvious, stubborn as she was. She hadn't heeded all the warnings and danger signals, and here we were, watching my poor nephew, crying and dying and nailed to a cross. The Romans thought us all revolutionaries. Oh, how they misjudge our power. Simply standing here in the cold, trying to support my sister, trying to make sense of recent events. Well, we were about as capable of revolution as the mules in the fields. Beaten by poverty, taxed into submission, and shivering now as our last best hope flits in and out of consciousness. For this would-be revolutionary is just my sister's boy, and he is fading away before our eyes. I want to rage at this foolishness, this waste. I want to scream at the callousness of the soldiers. But he'll be gone soon anyway, and we will, as women do, pick up the pieces of wrecked lives and unrealised dreams, turning the other cheek, just as he asked us to do. We'll wrap him and anoint him and bury him when this is done, and turn to each other for comfort the remaining days of our lives. But for now, in the growing cold and dark, as the crowds disperse and the soldiers lose interest, we simply witness. Years ago, when I first began writing, I was part, again, of a women's writing group that met in the Junction pub in Hume. Maybe one or two are familiar with it, yes. A couple of nods there. Now, this was a social thing, as well as productive, as you can imagine. And our fortnightly plan was for each of us to come up with a line that would kickstart us into writing a poem or a piece of writing, whatever it happened to be, a short story very often. And then the next time we met, we would share what we'd written. Now, I realise that's all very familiar nowadays, but 25 years ago, not quite so much. One of the group was pretty anti-religious at the time, and none of us were particularly religious then, and she wrote a very powerful poem which critiqued Mary's role as the mother of Jesus. And years later, as I found myself wearing quite a different hat, I finally responded to my friend's piece of writing, and I've called it Beige Mary. Mary, a poet once described you as the spirit of beige. Colourless, spineless, a creature of no depth, unable even to say no. But I wonder, it must have taken courage that I can't imagine to accept the cup that was handed to you. From single to youthful to sudden maturity and worldliness. How must that have felt? For you were no pushover, used to hard work, and not stupid either. Did your chin jut as you started the long journey? Back straighten? Breasts swell with a little fierce pride as they swelled in preparation for your baby? And in travelling those miles, did your pride swell for the man by your side? Was he your rock when the baby kicked, your guide when exhaustion set in? You'd known poverty then, I bet. Was the straw bed the final straw for a while, as you strained against the pain? Did you try for a smile as your man looked on in panic? Did he hold you or desert you? Did motherhood look like the worst thing in the world? Dear poet, there was nothing beige about any of that. And then months later, as a child grew, and you and your man with unexpected wealth hidden in a blanket fled for your lives. How beige was that as the screams of your neighbours and their murdered children rang in your ears? How tough were you then? How beige. Years jump, all a little older, all a little wiser. and your family has grown too. But your eldest son, the driven one, the speaker, the prophet, that radiant, handsome man, perhaps, always in trouble this way or that, arguing with his betters, his siblings, his elders, even you. How colourless were you then when the world wanted his head on a platter? Did you consider your life for his? You, Mary, are every shade of the sun, red and gold and yellow and bright, bright light. You are dazzling and fiery and brave and ferocious and hot of blood and never broken. Beige is just not your colour.